Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I finally am done with this bitch-ass game I've been trying to beat forever now. I just couldn't bring myself to finish it. I kept taking time away and taking time away. It's about 11 hours long, somewhere in there. And I got it when it came out, like brand new I bought it. And I was so excited about this game. I wanted it so desperately. I'd heard a lot of bad things. But I wanted to give the game a benefit of the doubt and really kind of jump into it not knowing much because I'm a massive survival horror fan, and I'm a fan of some of the things that have ties to this game. The game that I struggled forever to finally finish up, and just did it this past weekend about 2 days ago, is the PS4 Day 1 Edition. Like that means anything, it just means a Day 1 patch to me as far as I'm concerned. It is the Callisto Protocol, or Callisto Protocol. A lot of people keep pronouncing it different ways. Personally, I don't give a shit. As I said, I'm a big survival horror game fan. My biggest favorite series of that kind of thing happens to be Silent Hill. Behind that, you have Dead Space 1 and 2. I played like the first couple of levels of Dead Space 3, and I wasn't impressed when it first came out. So I got rid of it, and I recently rebought it in Tennessee last year, so eventually I'll try to get around to playing that. And let me be honest with you, I was looking forward to Callisto Protocol tremendously. It looked so great. It looked like my kind of thing. Of course, the creator of Dead Space, Glenn Schofield, or Schofield, I think it's Schofield though, he went away from EA, and eventually he developed this with his team. He directed this game, and it had the worries, which ended up being justified, of being a Dead Space knockoff. It really is like that, but I think if you had any kind of survival horror game in space, it was probably going to feel like a Dead Space knockoff. It didn't matter what it was. Not that I have many off the top of my head outside of this and Dead Space to reference, but I'm pretty sure if you did anything that had shooting in space with some kind of people attacking you or anything like that, unlike Alien Isolation, which was more about FPS hiding from fucking things you can't kill, you have not much of a variation you could pick amongst the genre itself. I was loving this, though. I was really looking forward to it. It looked beautiful. It had so much going for it, especially me being a massive Dead Space fan. And here I am talking about a game that I am like 8 months late reviewing, because it took me 8 months to beat the shit. I may have played maybe 2 or 3 hours every once in a while. Every few weeks I would finally jump back in. I would complete a movie or a game, and then I would try to jump back in and play it for a little bit. And I just could not get myself zoned in on this after the first couple of hours had went by. Where do I even start with this? Let me start with the plot, first and foremost. You play as a fellow named Jacob, played by Josh Duhamel, who is in a lot of stuff I love. He was kind of the generic officer from Transformers. He's in some comedy stuff I like. One in particular my wife wanted me to watch that was really, really good, about he and a friend, or he and an enemy, a frenemy, if you will, of his, who have mutual friends that are a couple that had a baby. They die in a car wreck. He and this lady he can't stand, that they went on a date once upon a time and it didn't go well, had to basically take over you know, this little girl's life and basically adopt her and raise her. And it was super sweet. He's really, really good. I don't think he has a ton of range on his persona, but I think when it comes to comedy, as Josh Duhamel, he does well. When it comes to horror in this case, or like action, like Transformers, he is good as Josh Duhamel. I like the guy a lot. To me, Callisto Protocol is his best performance, easily with the motion capture and everything. The guy kills it, as well as everybody else in the game. There's not much to their characters, but if I'm being honest with you, they did a good job with what they had to do and the kind of writing they were given. I think they all did a great job. But let me get to that in a moment. He plays Josh Duhamel, who plays as a guy named Jacob, and he is transporting some kind of package to this dead moon of Jupiter, I believe is what they said. I think it's called Callisto, or Callisto. I don't remember what it's supposed to be called. I assume that's what the title is referencing, but I don't know. While he's on the way over there with his friend, they get boarded because of whatever reason, they don't really know, but something happens to the ship. They start getting boarded by the one chick that played Katana in the first Suicide Squad movie, and she was amazing in here too. She did so good. She has kind of a vengeance storyline that we get into later on as a subplot. You don't really focus on it too early in the game, or even for most of the game. It's maybe the last 20% of the game that you even know why she's doing what she's doing. But anyway, she boards the ship, and they end up crashing the ship. And Jacob survives, that other girl survives. However, his buddy, his other pilot that he's flying with, dies in the crash in a horrible way. Like the whole side of his face is just torn up. It's pretty horrific, if I'm being honest with you. And then the game kind of treats you to this American Werewolf in London style of storytelling, where every once in a while, that pilot buddy will just show up around corners and stuff, just kind of wandering around. And you're assuming it's some kind of ghost or vision or hallucination, more than likely, kind of like Dead Space had a little bit of that going for it too. And as I played this game, I was worried we were going to go in that direction, but I assume it's Glenn's way of referencing his previous work with Dead Space, I assume. Now, basically, when you get off of the ship after crashing, the iron... I think, what is the place called? It's a prison planet, basically, called Black Iron Prison, and you encounter Sam Witwer, who played Starkiller in the Force Unleashed Star Wars games, which I love Sam Witwer. He plays Darth Maul nowadays. The guy is extremely talented. I love Sam Witwer. Sam Witwer arrests you and basically locks you up in prison for no reason. Can I be honest with you about the writing? The writing is pretty fucking bad for this game. The kind of budget it had and everything, the writing is not good. Not good at all. Between the dialogue being mildly okay for like a military prison type of thing, even though there shouldn't be as much military involvement as there is, but there kind of is like a sub-layer of the story. Basically, you're locked away for no reason. I don't understand why Sam Witwer's motivations were, how he could get away with doing this all the time, to all kinds of people. Innocent, guilty, everybody. Basically, you're locked away on a prison planet, and you have this thing put in the back of your neck. It's kind of scary, like a Mark of the Beast type of thing, where now you see a health bar as you play the game. That health bar will increase and decrease and everything else as you get attacked throughout the game. And there's a prison riot that happens, and you don't really know at first what caused this, but with the trailers and everything, you eventually found out what it was. Essentially, there was some kind of virus going around that's infecting the other prisoners. They're getting sick, like zombie type of shit. And very much like Dead Space, they start to transform and mutate, not to the extent of Dead Space where they look like fucking bugs, but like, you know, they don't look like praying mantises is what I'm trying to tell you. They look like regular old people with really stretched out, goofy looking mouths. The game is filled with jump scares in this prison. Now mind you, I love the environments. The graphics on this game are absolutely beautiful, breathtaking. They are incredible. Even on a PS4, with the day one launch that I got when I first put it in my PS4, I couldn't play the fucking thing. This is probably to me, so I can go off on a tangent for a moment. This to me is the best ever example of a game that in the future, if you buy it, post when the server is shut down, you won't be able to play it. Ever again. I would give it 5 to 10 years that you'll never be able to play this again without having a PS4 or whatever that already has the updates downloaded to it and saved to it. Because, dude, I will tell you, I put this in and tried to play it without updates. I typically try to do that like I did with The Quarry from the folks who did Until Dawn when I reviewed that last year. The Quarry didn't have as many issues, but there were some things that were a little weird with some bugs and glitches in that game. In here, you can't play the base game without all the update downloads. You can't do it. You physically can't do it. And I say that mainly because it's so... the frame rate is skittering everywhere to like 10 frames a second, you know? I had a fight the first time that combat is introduced in the game that I physically couldn't tell what I was looking at. I just had to swing and hope for the best, and I didn't even understand the dodge mechanic in the game because of how fucked up this frame rate was. Well, at some point it occurred to me after Rambo Raff for Life, one of my favorite YouTubers ever's video, talking about how he tried to play this on a PS4 and how broken it was before I even delved into the game. I was sad for him. And then I played this myself and I was like, he's 100% right. These guys, nobody that complained about that day one situation with Callisto Protocol were lying to you. They were 100% right. The game was fucking broken when it first came out. And you couldn't play it without the internet and without an update. Which is embarrassing and upsetting to me. Because now games want you to pay $70 fucking for new games. I paid $60 for this. They want you to pay $70 for brand new games that aren't even fucking completed. When this game came out, you didn't have New Game Plus, where you would be able to finish the game for the first time ever, have your stuff carry over to your next playthrough, like your guns, your ammo, your credits, all of that stuff. It didn't even have that. It didn't have a dismemberment mode. I just got the dismemberment download, the update, whatever, the other day when I was going to finish the last couple of hours. That was way after this has come out, from what I can tell, which I think is insane. And playing the game most of the time without any kind of dismemberment, the way Dead Space had dismemberment, which was amazing, like one of the highest standards of dismemberment in games for me. The fact that this game did not have that was so weird most of the time, but again, in that last couple of hours playing it now, if you play it for the first time ever right now, you'll have the dismemberment download, update, whatever, to where you can enjoy that, which is kind of cool. But the rest of the game surrounding it is a fucking horrible mess. Again, 10 years down the road, you won't be able to play this anymore, which is sad. Every review I do recently, I seem to be hitting on this for newer games because they fucking deserve it. Like what I said about my Modern Warfare review for the 2019 reboot. I couldn't play the thing. I had to wait for like 3 hours of downloads to get an update to be able to play the fucking thing. It's ridiculous. There's no excuse for that kind of thing. And it's always this Warzone tied-in bullshit. All this online garbage is a waste of money. And the fact that you can buy games that aren't even functional anymore is insane to me. Anyway, so you're really just kind of stranded in the prison. And over time you get like a new outfit, you get like a kind of like a space exploration suit and that kind of thing. Throughout the game, you get more guns, but most of this game is focused on melee combat because there's not a whole lot of ammo in the game. As you fight enemies, you have to do the most fucked up combat system I think I've ever experienced in my life. To me, it is the most... I know Rambo Raff for Life loved it. I know a lot of people who love the combat on this game. But most people, and I'm with them on this, usually I'm not with the majority on most games, I'm 1000% with most people who played this who hated the fucking combat. And you know what I think? I think it's not so much the combat, as in swinging the R2 button, for example, hitting that to swing melee weapons that you have to use most of the time, like the stun baton. And then when you use a gun, you have the same button for firing the gun, just like you would on most games. I don't think that was the issue here. What I think was actually the issue people had with this game was the dodge mechanic. The way you dodge attacks from enemies, when they come out of like a sewer grate, right? They're going to come running at you, and you probably, to be wise, you have to be patient in this game. To be successful, you have to be patient at the Callisto protocol. If they come running at you, you have to sit and wait for them to swing like 3 times, and you have to dodge each of those, and then you can fuck them up with your different weapons. Unless you want to shoot them first, you can probably pull that off most of the time, but you're going to run out of ammo, so it's not really the best thing ever. But if you wait out and dodge them, you have to use the left joystick. And now mind you, a joystick goes in every single fucking direction attached to it. It doesn't just have like a D-pad situation. No, with a joystick, you have to hit left and then right when they swing again, and then left again when they swing again to be able to dodge those things. You have to do this 3 to 4 times depending on the type of enemy. And then some, you can't even dodge those things. So I fucking hate the dodging mechanic. I could never remember it because of how stressful some of the game design was on this game. This kind of mechanic, especially with how you couldn't run the fuck away from people that were coming at you, when you have a group of 4 or 5 or 6 of these things, whatever they're called, the biophage, I think is what they're called, which I don't even think I heard that in the game. I think other people on other reviews had mentioned that it was officially called that. In the game, you'd never know what they're called, as far as I remember. But the biophage, these virus, zombie, whatever the fuck they are, Dead Space knockoff enemies, these guys are super fast, like not like extremely fast, like Alma and Fear, but like fast enough that they will fuck you up. And they can do a lot of damage. I went through so much health in this game, and the fact that I could not, in the stress of the moment, with having to fight 4 and 5 and 6 of these things at one time a lot of the time, with mostly melee combat, it was such a bad idea, dude. It was such a bad idea. It was such a frustrating game because of that, and I hated that shit. Outside of that dodge mechanic, I liked everything else. I think the melee stuff was pretty cool. I think that the guns themselves weren't as satisfying as something like Dead Space. That's a little bit of a mixture of like vibrations on the controller and sound design and all of that. For the game to have such incredible sound design, as a matter of fact, for everything. The music is good. The environments, all of those things, mixed with beautiful graphics, for all of those things to be so wonderfully vivid, and the sound design to be so incredible the way it was, the guns don't sound that good. Maybe the assault rifle you can unlock is kind of satisfying when you shoot it. That's really it. It kind of reminds me of the one assault rifle from Halo. But I'm not with this game. I wanted to love it, and I'm totally the audience this should be for. You know, I love survival horror, like I'm a die-hard fan of survival horror. One of my favorite things about Silent Hill is how it's more melee focused, because when you get a really gross, disgusting, scary enemy, and they come at you and you don't have enough bullets and you gotta swing the pipes and stuff at them that you find, that's a stressful thing, man. And I love the combat of those, but they don't hit you with like 7 enemies at one time, some of them going behind you, and most of the time people try to argue, well, you have to not let yourself get flanked. How the fuck do you do that when they spawn behind you? How do you do that? It is filled with utter bullshit in its game design, in my opinion. And the fact that most of the time the areas are so cramped that you can't just run away, it's bullshit. It's filled with that kind of nonsense that to me is so unfair that it's not fair to the player. They can't really get a good grasp on most of what they should be able to do that they physically can't do. It's bullshit. It really makes me mad. You don't realize how angry I was, especially by the time I got to the final boss in the game. How much I was ready to bash my TV in. with my controller. Let me tell you, I don't have anger issues. I typically don't. I don't think I have any kind of place in the world of having anger issues like a lot of my friends do when it comes to playing video games when they get the shit kicked out of them and they get angry. I've seen it over and over again. I don't typically get that way. I get frustrated, but I don't get to the point where I want to destroy shit or throw things. This game made me want to do that because of how much bullshit is in that whole combat, dodgy mechanic thing. I fucking hate that. I fucking hate it so much I don't have words to describe it to you all. It's horrible in that respect. And to have kind of the most bland, milquetoast, generic, hits every fucking plot point you've ever heard in your entire life in sci-fi horror, ever used ever, in this game, for the story and everything, it is the most pathetic thing to have such a beautiful looking game for such a shitty story, shitty combat, all of that. It's such a shame of wasted potential, dude. It makes me sad for everybody involved with this. Now, again, I talked about the graphics being incredible. Can I just tell you, not many games do sweat well. You know what I mean? As weird as that is to say. But, like, you can turn your camera around and see, like, sweat beads coming down Josh Duhamel's face, lining up parts of his head, even on the PS4 version, which was incredible to me. I love that a lot. Another complaint about the graphics, though, just like with my Saints Row Remake Reboot review, I talked about that on my channel a while back, like around Christmas time, New Year's Eve time last year, 2022. Around the time this game came out, matter of fact. When I reviewed Saints Row, I talked about how, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a new graphics thing or what, I experience this all the time with newer games like The Quarry, like Saints Row, like this, where if you turn the camera too fast, it's like their heads and stuff go fuzzy, and it's like their hair has, like, shade on the things that they're lingering over, but, like, not in a natural way, like a weird way, like almost like the most digital, pixelated looking way. Think of Transformers Age of Extinction, how things transform like little beads, like nanobot type of shit. That's what it looked like. And it still looks like that in this sometimes. Not as much as those other two games I mentioned, The Quarry and Saints Row, but it still has that sometimes where I'm like, why do you look like that? It's a very bizarre, odd thing to me. But outside of all these things I talked about, what do I even like about the game? The acting is good for characters that are really boring. The writing is not good. It has a couple of really good action set pieces that feel like they're right out of Uncharted 2, for example. There are things that are cool in this game. The tension building isn't really there. It's not really scary, but let me tell you, some of the environments, even some certain hallways where I'm just paranoid knowing there's probably going to be a jump scare, I'm not afraid of the monsters themselves. They kind of suck ass. Not that the designs are horrible, it's just they're not really the most amazing thing ever. It's like saying the original Resident Evil had the best zombies you've ever seen up to that point in the world when it came out. It's just not the case. You know, you can like them, but it's just not the case to me. This is kind of the same example with these enemies. All of this stuff feels so half and half and so generic that it puts this bad taste in my mouth. And I could accept generic as these character designs, these characters we're playing as, the story. I could take generic for that and just say, well, hey, if they're going to be a series like they seem to be teasing at the end of this game, I kind of don't mind if we had better elements that could develop a lot better in the future sequels, especially if we got a Callisto Protocol 2, which I personally do not think will happen. Everybody's saying it's going to happen. I'll fucking believe it when I see it. After the sales and the reputation of this thing, I'll believe it when I see it. But with all of the issues in this, and with how the guns, even the sound design for the guns isn't that great, and the upgrades in the game to get for guns and stuff aren't that great, I just don't find almost anything about this game satisfying, and frankly, it's not even that scary. Not that I need it to be. I can take a generic game, like I said. I don't need it to be super frightening, and I have some anxiety here and there about certain areas I had to go into, which was kind of nice. The game built its areas nice. But for a 10 or 11 hour game, I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again. One of the best elements about the game that I thought was a very smart choice was not giving you a map. You don't get a map in the game. You basically just wander from area to area, but it's not so open like in Dead Space where you could kind of get lost if you didn't have that little laser pointer thing attached to your Isaac character in the original Dead Space games. It's not like that. It's like you can actually just wander around and you won't get lost in the game, but for some reason you'll still have this feeling of being lost, which is kind of cool. I really appreciate that about it. There are a few things like those graphics, like the sound design, like that loss of map thing, that really affected things and made them really, to me, a lot better than they should have been. to not really be a AAA release, to not be tied to EA like Dead Space was, with this being the competition for the Dead Space remake, as a matter of fact, which I've not played because I don't have a PS5, this could have been really good as a competition, as a competitor to Dead Space. And yet, it seems so rushed to me, and it seems so faulty to me, and the ending, after all of the shit that you went through in this game for such a bland-ass story and bland-ass characters, the ending of this game's story, to me, is such a sad, pathetic thing that I'm kind of bummed out about it. Because again, I wanted to love this. I didn't want to like it. I didn't want to go into it hoping for enjoyment. I went into it wanting to love it. And frankly, the first hour or so with the prison lockdown, even though I had the performance issues like I talked about, I still really loved all of that. It was still really engaging, getting used to certain things like the combat at first, which I never really got a full hang up because of the dodge thing, but that's another story. I really wanted to love this. By the end of it, I have to tell you, I kind of hate it. I kind of hate it. As much as I'm typically very easy to please, and a lot of my reviews for movies, books, anything I talk about here on the channel, I usually rate the end of the things like I will for this video. And I usually give them like a 3 out of 5 stars if they're just kind of generic and okay, depending on how well made they are and whatever else I take into account, maybe nostalgia, whatever. But usually things don't have to do too much to impress me. This is a game that did so much, so poorly, that it pissed me off a lot. To the point where I don't even want to look at it. Like, they have the new Game Plus upgrade now from the update recently, in the last few months, or 6 months, or whatever. But I don't even want to go back and play it ever again because of how shockingly bad this was. And it makes me sad to spend $60 on something like this, where I've been finding all these new older games that I've wanted to play or have played at the store I've been going to recently for like $5 and $10 and $15. It's sad to see what happened with this. Callisto Protocol could have been really great. Another really good thing in here too that I do want to add on before I do my rating is that when you get killed in the game, even though dismemberment wasn't there at first, when you got killed in this game by one-shot enemies or by whatever, ran out of health, got fucked up, the different death animations for Josh Duhamel, number one, were incredibly acted, but number two, they were absolutely horrifying, sometimes better than what Dead Space had to offer when Isaac would get fucked up and killed. This was so good about that, and I wish it could have done everything else better. This is clearly what I would describe as a cult classic. People are either going to love this or probably hate it. I don't think most people have ever seen anything on the internet in the last 8 months since its release, or whatever it's been, 6 months, I don't know. I think it came out in December. But since it came out, I don't think I've heard anybody say that they thought it was just kind of in the middle. Like, they thought it was like a 5 out of 10 or anything like that. It seems to me like people are more on the positive side or more on the negative side about it. But for me, this is probably one of the worst newer games I've played. And to compare it, as I talked about in my previous videos, I loved, as I mentioned here, the Saints Row remake. As horrible as the story was, as cringe as it was with the political bullshit, getting on to the actual world they built, the guns, the customization, the cars, the clothes, all of that stuff was so incredible. Even if the radio station sucked in that game, everything else was so good outside of the radio and the story. That was so cringe. But I loved it. I played that thing to 100%, man. It was so damn good that people don't give it a chance because of how cringe and SJW that shitty-ass story is. This here doesn't have any of those issues violation-wise for, like, political bullshit, and yet it just completely does not land like it should, which is sad. Which is really sad, because I wanted it to. The fact that I would pick playing Saints Row again over this is shocking to me. And I feel bad for people like Josh Duhamel, who did a great job, for the chick from Suicide Squad, who did a great job, for Sam Witwer, who's always good, who's great here too. But none of these people were given a great script. None of them were given much to work with at all in this, which is a shame. The fact that it's as beautiful as it is, it has the ugliest internal area. I was going to make some kind of analogy out of that. It didn't fucking work. But you know what I mean. It's the ugliest fucking beautiful game I've ever seen in my life because of all the flaws. If I had to rate the Callisto Protocol on a 5-star basis, I think I'd give it like a 2 out of 5 stars. Like I said, it's got a couple of things that are really good. Usually a 2 out of 5 for me is a bad game that has some really good things about it that I really like. And I have those about Callisto Protocol. I wanted to give it a 3, but I can't justify it. Between the servers thing, how it's eventually going to be something that's going to be so broken people will never be able to play this unless they do it now. Between that and, like, all of the other things I talked about, like the horrible combat, dude. Not so much the melee fight, but like the combat, like having to dodge so much, how repetitive that can get, how annoying that can get, and how the tutorial, by the way, doesn't even describe to you how to do the dodge thing correctly, from what I can tell. Seems like I've seen a couple other people complain about that too. The way the game describes to do it, it doesn't work that way in the game. It's bullshit. Callisto Protocol is a broken fucking mess, and I hope that if we get a number 2, that it's a billion times better and isn't a number 2. Anyway, have you played a Callisto Protocol? What did you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I'd love to hear what you have to say down in the comment section down below. What do you think in comparison to this, to Glenn Schofield's other job, Dead Space? Do you love that more? Do you love this more? I like Dead Space way more. I think it's a billion times better. Again, haven't played 3, haven't played the remake, but eventually I'll get around to them, God willing. Anyway, that's my review. I'm sorry it took so goddamn long to get this review out to you guys, but I've been so put off with this game, and I just could not get myself mentally to sit down and play it, because I didn't want to. I physically could not get myself to my TV upstairs where my PS4 is to sit in a hot-ass room and play this thing, because it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it, and I wasn't having fun. And then to get to the final boss, like I talked about, and how absolutely obnoxiously frustrating that shit was. It just wasn't fun, and I hated that about it, because I wanted to enjoy it so much, and I just don't. I just don't. At the end of the day, I don't. I understand, again, a cult classic. There are people like my boy Rambo Raff for life who love it, but I am not a fan of this shit at all. I think it's got its pluses, but man, there are so many goddamn negatives. I don't even know how to describe it. But anyway, what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down below. 2 out of 5 stars from yours truly. Thank you all for watching. God bless you guys, and goodbye.